It will be a much more representative World Cup this time round because more teams are in it, Jim.
48 of them.
Yes. 48 of the buggers will be in the World Cup in the US, Canada and Mexico. Expanded from 32 teams. Much has been made of this. But Vish, more teams, more football, more money.
More lambs to the slaughter.
More lovely times. Surely that is what the equation is punching out.
Yeah, more lovely times, less jeopardy, more kind of confecting of, intrigue and narrative.
Mm-hmm.
You've talked a bit about how basically getting into the World Cup gives you a chance at righting some historical wrongs in terms. I'm not talking about tweets.
No.
I mean more in terms of your first time through to the knockout stages or something like that, getting past that first round, getting past the group stages.
Yeah, like Mexico's fifth game is the thing they want, isn't it? And there's an extra round now. So if they make it through that, does that count? Or does it become the sixth game?
Yeah, no, a quarterfinal is still a quarterfinal, Jim. No matter how much you try and paint it.
Yeah, Jimothy.
Yes.
So that kind of, I suppose, on that side of things, then it's all quite exciting, but I think we all know it's broadly bollocks, don't we?
Yeah,
the expansion of it and the way it's been expanded.
It's mostly down to. It feels like it's down to greed and a lack of understanding of what makes the World Cup such a special experience. Because there's already a lot of a regular World Cup, right? It was 32 teams. I think was the perfect format. Really, really good amount.
24 was too much of a closed shop. If you
I think so,
yeah.
and I think that was an issue, wasn't it? You have to acknowledge that the world is a massive place with lots of countries in it who all want to get a crack, but. That we're yet to see if it comes at the expense of quality and at the expense of the entertainment value of it. So perhaps we're wrong and it'll be really, really good. But who knows? It's a strange one, isn't it? The longest distance between venues is something like 2,800 miles this time around. It feels like that is surely going to be a logistical issue because there will be travel involved for teams. That is kind of flights. It's going to be significant travel. So it's hard to wrap your head around what it's actually going to look like in practice when we get to that World Cup. But it's a World Cup across 3 different countries. It's exciting. It's a World Cup in Mexico, which is the most World Cup as we know.
Yes.
So that's something I'm very excited about personally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think to have a football match, a World Cup football match at the Azteca Stadium again,
Yeah,
that's glorious.
it is.
Absolutely glorious. I know what you mean by the sort of the travel. I mean, the thing is, the World Cup was given to these countries before it was decided it was a 48-team World Cup. So, look, just as well it wasn't Qatar. Do you know what I mean? I suppose perhaps that's one of the reasons why they pushed it through, because in a whole continent, effectively hosting the
3
tournament,
giant countries,
and an enormous continent at that. Absolutely, yeah. They evidently they can. Well, they will,
and they all get on as well, which is useful.
Well, they all might become one country if the orange bloke has his way, but it seems unlikely now.
I was going to say it'd make travelling around easier, but it won't actually.
No, it won't.
Well, maybe cheaper internal flights.
Stupid fuck.
So 48 teams, as we said, and discussed last week, teams will be split into 12 groups of 4 teams, with the top 2 of each group going through and the 8 best third-place teams progressing to a new round of 32.
And obviously 32 is the previous number, so that's going to be very weird. Now, our experience of the World Cup is one of probably my favourite things about doing this show, because it's all hands on deck. Most of us are in most days. There's always stuff going on. There's so much to keep on top of, and the nature of that makes it really exciting. It makes everything feel very urgent, and it's going to be interesting to me to see how this expansion affects that, and whether it will become too much or whether it will actually just be, this is more of the same and I like that already. So great. But it's surely going to get fatiguing, because if there's a World Cup, I mean, we remember South Africa, which was quite dull. Most games were a bit of a grind in the group stages in particular. And it does affect your enjoyment of it. It does make it a shit experience. And when you have this many more teams in it, where obviously by the nature of it, the quality is lower and the jeopardy is lower because 3 teams go through in most groups, I do wonder if there's a danger of this being a real damp squib.
Do you feel it could
or a hot, muggy squib?
Yeah, do you feel it could be a tiny bit sort of Europa League in that you've got to trudge through it all, and then when you get into the later stage, you kind of go, oh yeah, those teams are quite interesting.
Yes.
You become the European snob that you are, Jim.
Possibly. I mean, on the day of the World Cup final, the opening game always feels like it was months ago. And,
do you think they'll have a semi-final on the same day?
Yeah,
so many games. You just have to pack it in.
Squidge it all down.
Well, to add some sort of numbers to that, the total number of games will increase from 64 to 104.
So many games.
40 extra games.
Utterly. Imagine the size of the wall chart.
Well, Jim's already made this point that he feels sorry for people who
live in small flats,
don't live in mansions, because we're going to struggle. Yeah. So the number of games played by teams reaching the final four will increase from 7 to 8. Now, the extra teams that will be participating, of course, are from around the world. Europe now has 16 places, which is up from 13, and no playoffs slots. So you've got 16 teams from Europe, because it can get a little bit tricky. So in South America, or CONMEBOL, they have 6 direct slots and 1 playoff slot, which is quite the number, considering there are only 10 teams in that qualifying group. So you could have 7 out of the 10 that make it there.
I know, but there's this is going to sound ridiculous, and I sort of don't care. But you feel like South American teams would make it feel like a World Cup.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
There's almost a bit of like, nah, you got to get them involved. As many as you can. Yeah.
I mean, like most South American teams are going to be there.
Yeah,
that is
which feels right.
Yeah,
if you're going to expand it like this.
I know what you mean. Oceania, they previously had just a sort of, if you like, a 0.5, which is a playoff spot. But they now have 1 slot and a playoff slot as well. CONCACAF have 6 spots, which is up from 3.5. And they also have 2 playoff slots, so you could have 8 teams.
Yeah.
Well, you'll definitely have 6, because you've got the 3 hosts. Then you're going to have 3 other sides. I mean, this is all good news for Jamaica and Steve McLaren, by the way.
And actually, when you lay it out like this, it does feel more exciting, doesn't it?
Well, there's a reason why they're doing it, of course. Africa has improved from 5 to 9. 5 always seemed stingy for Africa, and I understand. Well, where do you take them from? It is very, very difficult. This,
but 9 is good.
9
is a good expansion.
For an enormous continent, of course, with so many different teams. So yeah, I think that's fair. And then in Asia, they've now got 8 direct slots and 1 playoff slot as well, which is up from 4.5. So you can see where it was all coming from. So it will feel more representative of the globe itself. And I can't imagine...
you admit it's a globe now, do you?
Yes, we got him.
Well, I always think that it should be called the World Cup plate. But, maybe you could have a plate situation here. You finish in the bottom, you go to the World Cup plate. Keeps a lot of people happy, presumably. So yes, obviously, people saying that, come on, this is ridiculous. There's too many games being played. There's too many teams involved, etc., etc. So you're very sceptical, you two, which I think is the general mood in among these parts. And these parts are very, very European, we have to say.
Yeah. But it's we're sceptical a year out. As soon as it starts, we'll be into it. It'll go too long. I think this is the thing, isn't it? I don't even know if it's frustration, because it feels too I don't know, it feels too passive to be frustration, but this is just the way football's trending anyway. And I don't really think the people who benefit from it in terms of the teams are going to benefit from it in a meaningful way in terms of like raising football in their country beyond the window of that World Cup where it will be really fun. But we can't really do anything about it. This is the way of the world now.
I mean, you really are going to have to use your squad heavily.
Yes,
more so than ever if you're going to go far in this tournament.
Yeah. What I keep thinking about, the state that Harry Kane in particular will be in by the World Cup, because obviously Bayern are about to start the Club World Cup as well, so that means if they go far in it, which they have every chance of doing, they'll have a tiny pre-season. I know they have a bit more of a break in Germany, but essentially it's just going to be rolling football from the start of the season just finished all the way up to that tournament for Kane. So I mean, there is a chance that a lot of players will be in similar situations where they're very, very burned out.
Well, it's interesting.
His ankle is going to be in pieces. He's going to have to be put together by someone's nan.
Why someone's nan?
Just like they love puzzles, don't they?
I honestly thought you meant she was going to sew it together. That's where I was going with that. Anyway, in the US, a travel ban was enacted this month in response to the Boulder fire attack, though there is an exemption for athletes and their support teams entering the US for events such as the World Cup, Olympics and other major sporting events. Vice President J.D. Vance, very vocal Vice President, said, of course, everyone is welcome to come and see this incredible event, but when the time is up, they'll have to go home.
Yeah, and I mean, the danger is obviously is fans, isn't it?
Well, I mean, if Wales make it and they're singing "Please Don't Take Me Home,"
yeah, well,
what's Vance going to...
Well, he's going to send them home, I would imagine. That's it. He's big on that, isn't he? Yeah, I mean... I think it's a concern for a lot of people, isn't it? Going into that country, we're hearing stories of people being detained when they have visas and when they have in some cases when they're actually American citizens. So
people from this country as well.
Exactly. So it's it would be something that will make a lot of people nervous, I'm sure. And a year on from now, we don't know if that situation will be better. We don't know if it will be worse. And it's a thing that hangs over the tournament.
Some of the quotes that will come out from the Oval Office during the World Cup.
There's a big 1936 Olympics vibe.
Well, do you know? I don't think that's too much of a stretch to say, because also, we talked a fair bit on the show about like countries that shouldn't be hosting these things and the various different issues in those countries and why they aren't fit for holding global events. And there is a whiff of that with this World Cup, and it was something that was raised after the Russia World Cup in 2018 and all the talk about that. And obviously it came from a lot of people outside the US who often were working in or adjacent to some of the countries that we've spoken about. And one of the interesting things was like, it isn't necessarily related directly to like what a country's doing at the moment, but often it's historic as well. And with the US, there was always that thing of like, look, if you have issues with Russia and Qatar, absolutely fine. Where do you sit with the US and some of the things that they've done?
Yeah.
And now it's just a bit more in your face. Definitely. As we come up to the World Cup.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a lot of isolationist policy, trade wars, things like that.
Yeah.
It seems an unusual place to invite the world into. And obviously you've got the contrast of the difference between Canada and Mexico there as well. It's going to be a fascinating snapshot of a turbulent time.
I might say this actually, because what would it have been in 2019? We went to the US and Canada as well.
Is this for the live tour?
For our live tour, and we went and got our work visas. And I appreciate a lot of people are not going to need work visas; they're going to be there, just on holiday, really seeing the football. But I remember they were asking about, for everybody there, put your social media handles in, blah 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 blah, and there was a thing of, do we need to delete some tweets in the past? And all that. And there was that kind of chat, So, so I understand people are going, come on, it's America, it'll be fine. But with regard to that,
I don't think you can say that anymore.
I think with regard, I mean, you guys opened my eyes before we did this show. We pulled up some articles from reputable sources saying, look, this person was detained. They don't know why. They absolutely no idea.
They weren't told why.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I would say to anybody, just if you are going out there, and you just mind some of your social media activity. Sadly,
we burned this entire city to the ground once.
It's a crazy thing to say.
Jim, I'm obviously saying it's sort of like slightly tongue in cheek, but from experience, I am also saying I know it sounds utterly ridiculous, but one thing I do want to know is, you remember when Trump and Bolsonaro had that meeting of minds and they swapped football shirts and Trump had a number 10 on the back, Trump of the Brazil shirt? Has he still got that?
Who knows?
Maybe. Put it on for the tournament.
Do we need to pivot from our support of the Musketeer and what he's done with X?
Oh, yeah.
This is the thing.
Whose side are we on now?
I know, yeah.
It's so hard to keep track of.
What's the social media thing that Trump's on?
Truth Social.
There's a lot of good stuff on Truth Social.
a lot of good stuff from Dear Leader on Truth Social.
Yeah. So if you're going, you need to take that line.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Anyway, let's get back to
bad stuff on X, isn't there?
Let's get back to the football. So, which countries have qualified so far for this mega World Cup? Well, Iran are there. That'll please the host.
Yeah, that's not It's not a great start, is it?
It's superb,
Brilliant,
isn't it? Get them in. I'm so glad they've qualified.
Do you remember when the US and Iran played each other in the 98 World Cup?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember, but before the game, when they were exchanging pendants,
flowers,
the number of gifts from the Iran side,
yeah.
And I can't remember who was the American captain at the time, but he's had like a little,
that's right,
little crest to hand over, and he was just like holding all these things. It was like, no, we're so cool. Here's another bouquet of flowers. Honestly, it's so.
You need a wheelbarrow. You need a wheelbarrow to get it all off. Yeah, and Iran said, "You can have all this, but we'll have the 3 points." So yeah, Iran are there. Japan, Jordan, South Korea, Uzbekistan.
See again, like there are. Obviously, it's complicated, isn't it? But that's a great story that Uzbekistan are there.
Yes, of course, it is a great story. Australia as well.
Yep,
I'm surprised they're often there.
They are.
So in New Zealand, great, they're back. Canada, Mexico, and the US, of course. Argentina, who would have thought? Brazil, Carlo's done it. He's bloody well done it. He wasn't there long.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I mean, you would have to finish outside of the top 7 to make sure you were. And Ecuador as well. Ecuador have done very well, actually. They what are they currently second, I think, in qualification. They got their business done early. And if you look at the CONMEBOL standings, almost certainly Uruguay, Paraguay, and Colombia will join them automatically. Yeah. Venezuela honing in on that number 7 playoff spot, although Bolivia are behind them. Chile have gone.
Yeah, Chile are in a right old state, aren't they?
10 points from 16 games.
Looking like they're very likely to finish bottom.
I mean, if you'd have said to I know Chile have not been in great shakes recently, but like 6.5 places out of the 10, you would be thinking, oh yeah, we're on for this, but nowhere near. So those are the teams that have already qualified, of course, and the hosts and the holders and so on. Mauricio Pochettino's boys lost 4-0 at home to Switzerland in the early hours of Wednesday morning. Very much early hours of Wednesday morning, our time.
Yes.
That would be incredibly accommodating to the European broadcasters if they were.
And possibly the Swiss with their general clock expertise.
Yes, good point. They know the tick.
But do they know the talk as well? That's only time will tell, of course. It's their 4th defeat in a row. They lost to Panama, Canada, Turkey, and
sounds like that Animaniacs song about the map. Yeah. Panama, Canada, Turkey, Switzerland.
Yes.
I mean, ultimately, they could bring that back for this World Cup, couldn't they?
Yeah.
Imagine losing to Turkey. Embarrassing. Jeez.
Yeah, so Poch got a lot of work to do. Much like at the City Ground in the Senegal-England game, boos rang around the stadium in Nashville at full time.
Copying us again?
Yeah. I was saying Buccettino doesn't work. Does new work. Right then, after the break, we're going to be talking about some of the favourites for next summer's World Cup.
I would like to thank President Trump, with whom I have a great friendship, and to assure him that together we will make not only America great again, but also the entire world.
Silly.
Today I feel like a prat.
Making the world great again, because it was in the past. The whole world was great. Mm-hmm. That is, I mean...
Fair play to him.
You've got to aim high, Jim.
Yeah, you do.
Well, it's unlikely that the US will be among the favourites for the tournament next summer.
Which they'll be gutted by.
Yeah.
Because surely this would have been a long-term target. Maybe. But anyway.
What, being one of the favourites? I think being...
Not one of the favourites, but you'd want to go into it in a better, shape than they're in.
Much like England, Jim.
Yes.
A year away, though. A lot can happen in 1 year. Now, let's talk about some of the teams that could make an impression on the tournament next summer. Let's start with some of our European lot. Spain, of course, are the reigning European champions, not the Nations League champions, of course. But Vish, they have to be among the favourites next summer.
Yes, for the annoying reason that they've already shown how good some of their young players are with winning the Euros, and they'll all be a little bit older and better with more experience. And it's all a little bit annoying. And the other annoying thing about it is, sometimes with Spain in particular, you could often chart their success by the success of, say, Real Madrid or Barcelona. Mm-hmm. And if you look across both teams now, they're not necessarily awash with Spanish talent. A lot of that Spanish talent has now moved further around. Not now moved, but it's just more dispersed than it has been in previous iterations of very successful Spain teams. But the annoying thing is Real Madrid are in a funk. Barcelona are, while they're successful at the two, are still trying to refine their feet. And all their other Spanish players are thriving outside of those two basket cases. One of our beautiful boys is in there. We've got a second beautiful boy joining him. I've got to turn this on England, but essentially what I'm saying is, Spain are pretty good.
Yeah, and Spain look like a club side in a way that's very rare at this level. There's obviously Rodri to come back as well.
Oh, God.
Stop saying that.
Yeah, well, it's just, we can't avoid it. It's like the T1000, isn't it? It's annoying.
Who have they signed? Have they signed Shirky as well, Spain? Fuck's sake.
Well, they've signed this young Dutch player, apparently. Brilliant.
Yes, yeah. Centre-back, isn't he?
Yeah, he's really good. Spain feel like the favourites to me. They feel like the obvious favourites in a way where quite often the obvious favourites end up not winning it.
And yet they didn't win the UEFA Nations League. And that gives...
Well,
I would say that gives us hope. No, it gives Portugal specifically hope.
They've lost 2 finals in a row. And it is 28 finals Spanish teams had competed in before that, where they'd won them all. So exactly, yeah. So maybe they're on a losing run now.
So are they bottle jobs?
It does look like it. Although I think, are they... If you think about it, the UEFA Nations League for European teams, it is the third best tournament of that one Euros World Cup.
Sure.
Conference League as well. Is it basically...
There's a bit of daylight in there as well, but go on.
Yes.
It's a bit of daylight. Yeah.
All right. Look, Portugal won the Nations League, and with that talent... They're a force.
It's the balance in the team as well, isn't it?
That's the
and
most.
Also, a lot of those players play for PSG, and you can sense those connections and that understanding between them while they're on the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, Spain and Portugal, as we saw the other night or week or whatever it was at the UEFA Nations League,
the streets ahead of everyone else.
The talent they possess is frightening, and as I say, I think Roberto Martinez often, I think, slightly harshly derided at national level. As a manager, I think he is either finding or has found the right formula for Portugal now, even with the 40-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo in the team.
Well, you made the point before about Cristiano Ronaldo being a bit more self-aware of his own body, I suppose, and thus more self-aware of his standing in the team. And, this World Cup is a great example of a tournament where, for the first time in a while, maybe actually the previous Euros, but he's got to think, I shouldn't be playing every game.
Oh, yeah.
And there's something to be said for that, for a bloke as driven as him.
Could this be why he's kind of set out the Club World Cup, maybe? Because I know he's likely to sign with Al Nassr again, but I'm sure they could have done a sort of short-term deal with Botafogo or whoever might have been interested in.
He wanted to play in the Club World Cup. Let's not be silly, but yeah, maybe they'll save him for the knockouts in the World Cup next year. Although he may not, he may need convincing of that. France are the other side in Europe, where I think, again, they'll always be there or thereabouts with that talent. The one thing that I personally think is holding them back, and Andy Brassel certainly does think that as well, is the manager.
I mean, so what was Brassel saying?
Well, he said it was one tournament too far for Didier Deschamps.
So they're winning it then?
Well, yeah,
I mean, but he's also written off Germany. So
they're winning it as well.
Yeah, he's going to be.
Are they doing that 2 winners now? That would make sense.
Yeah, they are. There's enough teams.
That's true. Yeah,
they can win the plate.
They can win the plate. Well, Deschamps again is being derided a bit in France,
and he's been there since 2012.
Yeah,
it's a long time.
He should have gone after the last World Cup. I mean, I appreciate we've talked about that at length, but.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, in the Euros, they were ultimately a bit disappointing, weren't they?
Yeah,
it's a hell of a squad that he's got access to, and it must be frustrating that Zidane's right there, and the longer he's out of the game, presumably the more of a kind of wearing effect on his powers that potentially has. And, you look at some of those forward players, right wing alone. Should they choose to use any of these players there, because a lot of them can play all over the place. You've got Elise, Doué, Dembele, and Cherki. That's one position.
Yeah,
it's an unbelievable squad.
Depressing. I mean, I think if we're talking in terms of favourites, as I say, those are the 3 teams from Europe. Yeah, England may well get a mention, but it doesn't feel like that, certainly this week. I think I think any team outside of Europe and South America, I don't think will be considered favourites. I mean, Senegal impressed. They could do something at the tournament. But the two in South America, Argentina and Brazil, will always be mentioned. Of course, Argentina defending champions. It looks very much like Lionel Messi will be playing at the World Cup.
Yeah, and is there potentially an issue similar to Ronaldo in recent tournaments for Portugal, where politically it's very difficult to not play him when they've got younger, fitter, sprightlier options that might actually balance the team better?
I mean, Messi is a few years younger. He's 37. You're right to say what you're saying.
I think he's 37 still.
Yeah, I mean.
Well, do you know Lionel Scaloni said recently that they're not reliant on him anymore.
Yeah.
But he's only saying that to have him in the squad. Do you know what I mean? He's don't worry, we're not relying on him.
Yeah.
He's always going to be there, of course. Yeah. And I don't really ever say in not picking him, but yeah, I kind of trust that they're getting the best of both worlds. The issue comes from, we all know football to this level that as soon as it goes slightly wrong and Messi's not there, get Messi in. That's the answer.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Julian Alvarez and Lautaro Martinez are both in very exciting form.
They're going to be a force.
You got young Nico Paz coming through as well, who I think that'll be a great stage for him.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a force, is obviously about that. Brazil and Ancelotti are an interesting one. I wonder, this will be a chat that we'll come back to, but I wonder, with all this chat of club managers becoming international managers, we have some spectacular examples of that. And of course, it's happened before. Didier Deschamps, Roberto Martinez mentioned.
Most managers take that pathway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but with England, what we've done with Tuchel, Ancelotti as well, it hasn't worked for Italy with Spalletti as well. There are one or two other examples. If you look at the current world champions, it's with Scaloni, who's the Argentinian Football Association man, same with De La Fuente in Spain.
Get Carsley in, is that what you're saying?
I honestly think next summer...
Carsball 2026.
Yeah, there you go. Get Sir Gareth back. No, I wonder, it's going to be interesting how it all goes. And will the likes of Brazil and England regret what they've done? Will they be ruining their decision, or will they be celebrating from the rafters?
There is a feeling, certainly in my house, that Rafinha might win the World Cup by sheer strength of will alone.
Oh, I see.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
I think Brazil are a funny one, aren't they? Because it doesn't necessarily look like a vintage squad. I mean, you obviously got Rafinha in there and Vinicius Junior, Bruno Guimaraes, Cunha, Marquinhos, players that we know are very good and that have big reputations. And I wonder if actually they seem a little bit less exotic because we know a lot of them from England and from nearby. But I don't think it's outrageous to say it's not a vintage Brazil squad.
No, but they've got enough players that could do something. And again, it's all about Ancelotti trying to get that cohesion, trying to get that going. And because if Brazil win the World Cup next year, it wouldn't be an outrageous thing. They might feel that in Brazil.
I think it would. It'd be a joyous thing.
No. When I say it right, sorry, it's not a ridiculous thought to think that Brazil could win the World Cup next summer. Because I think that they're further up the rankings than, say, Germany are, for example.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think even when Jim was naming their talent there, a lot of them play similar positions and thus can't be on the field at the same time, which becomes a bit of a problem. And then at the same time, Ancelotti's playing 4 up front now. So it's okay, brilliant. You're just really leaning into the vibe of what Brazil should be.
Would it be impossible
caricature of Brazil?
Yeah, exactly. I think it'd be impossible to resist, wouldn't it? You got these players at your disposal. I know I've just said it's not a vintage one, but there are still some great forward players in there. Maybe you just cannot help yourself.
It'd be great if, during training, when previously, say Arteta's played crowd noise to get them distracted. Ancelotti's just playing Mas que Nada on repeat. And he's like, right, here we go.
That's the stuff. And Richarlison's going to get the winner in the World Cup final next summer. Right, coming up after this, you've got some questions about England. That's right, everybody. Thank you for getting in touch with some big questions for Thomas Tuchel and England over the next year.
We'll pass them on.
Let's start with this one from James on Blue Sky. Which players do you think are going to emerge as key players for Thomas Tuchel in 12 months' time?
This is obviously difficult, so let's get our crystal balls out. And bear with us on this because we can't predict the future. I do think when you look at the amount of Chelsea players who Tuchel picked in this squad, and also when you look at Liam Delap, who's someone I expect to be kind of involved with England. I think this is a really interesting opportunity for them in particular over the next season because of the Champions League involvement, where they've got a chance to actually kind of step up into that next level and play those games. Will we see a bit more from Colwill? Will Delap take to it like a Delap to water?
Also, they've got the experience of the Club World Cup under the
belts. Well, and there's that as well, which it may well be a factor. So I think for all of those players, I think Madueke is a very, very good player with some edges to smooth, but we've seen recently that he can deliver for England, and he's a viable option in those areas. I think all of those guys are ones to keep an eye on. I think
Madueke is an interesting one, and I think he's maybe worth a mention because I think he's quite two-footed and can play either side. You would expect Saka to be on that right side, but if England are to go deep in the tournament, you just need substitutes. You need a squad.
Yeah.
Madueke was one of the very, very few, if only, England players in those games against Andorra and Senegal who there was just a flicker, and I don't want to overdo this for crying out loud, but just a flicker of positivity sent in his direction. And again, with the tournament, with the demands of the Premier League season and playing in the Champions League and all that kind of stuff, exhaustion and tiredness is going to be a factor. They've been training intense, for crying out loud, because of the heat, blah, 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 blah. Madueke still looked pretty fresh. He's not a... He often starts for Chelsea, but doesn't always, and we know they've got a lot of players. I wonder if, again, that may come into Tuchel's thinking.
Yeah,
by the time that comes around, he might not be absolutely exhausted. You saw a few of the England players before the Euros last time round, were just... Clearly Kane wasn't fit. Bellingham was on fumes, you might say, even though he made some vital contributions. So Madueke is one that I think is probably worth a mention there.
He's a little bit of a unicorn as well,
yes.
Madueke, in that it's quite rare to have two right-sided left-footers, who play that far forward. So, you could almost... You kind of want to leave Saka on as long as possible, don't you? Because you could almost be in a situation where Saka does a lot of the right-wing stuff and then gets moved centrally if you're chasing a game, and Madueke put on there to do all
Palmer comes on centrally, or if Foden has a good season.
But I mean, in that, England will never have to lose running at an opposition's left back.
Yeah.
Because they've got two players who can do that over the course of 120 minutes if need be.
Yeah, that's a good... By the way, I think one name that I'm sure this is becoming that player of why is he not picking him? Why is he not playing? We want to see him. Adam Wharton.
Yeah.
Is that guy, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. The thing about Adam Wharton you've got to remember is Tuchel has addressed why he's not in the squad, and it was because of concussion protocols from the FA Cup final.
Well, but the question is...
Tuchel even went to say, he trained in the previous camp and he really liked what he saw.
So actually, I'm wrong to worry.
Yes,
fine.
Yeah, you are. The question is, in the next 12 months, who's going to emerge as a key player? I think Wharton will. We've mentioned Madueke.
Are we not mentioning people who for example, I was going to mention Eze, because I reckon Eze will end up starting a left wing.
I think you're right. I think you might be onto something there. I really do, because I think Eze, you saw him, he's just a delightful player. And I think whoever's... I think he can drift inside. I think that, who your left back, if it is Miles Lewis-Skelly, I think he can get forward and cover that. Or whatever. Yes, go on, Jim.
I was going to say, I think on the fullbacks, Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall have a good chance of being serious options further down. I think, and we'll come on to this, but I think fullback is potentially a bit of a problem issue.
Well, I do.
Problem area.
So I think the areas that are up for I think the areas that are up for grabs. Kane's going to start. Saka's going to start. At the back, take your pick of the centre backs. I don't think that's an area. I think it'll probably be John Stones. I would imagine Mark Gay or maybe Konza. I think there'll be too many surprises there. I think fullbacks, for the first time in a long time, it is really up for grabs. I can't imagine Kyle Walker will play.
Well, I think you just got to call up Kyle Walker and Luke Shaw just to be safe.
Well, no, the funny thing is, look, this is not going to happen, but if Luke Shaw did have a full season with Manchester United, he's young enough.
Option.
He would be an option. But Lewis Hall,
I think we need to stop talking about that now.
Fine.
I really think we should move on from Luke Shaw.
Okay, fine.
But the reason I say that is because I think it's Lewis Skelly or it's Lewis Hall. Can we play Miles Lewis Hall Skelly?
Maybe.
Get them both on.
Oh yes,
I like that idea.
That sounds like one of Pete's games.
So I think Livramento's in there. Alexander Arnold, just because of the option he gives you, is so different.
I don't understand how he isn't the first name on the team sheet, to be honest.
Team sheet?
Yeah.
Over Kane and Saka?
Yeah, essentially. He's the obvious first choice for me. I mean, essentially, the first name on the team sheet is in reality about 5 different people, isn't it?
Sure.
But he should be in that group for me.
Okay, interesting. Well, I know that people would agree with you. Okay, so let's kind of, as we're talking about this, move on from to a question from Kai on X, who said, "Where do you think England will be positionally weakest come the start of the World Cup?"
Yeah, we sort of addressed that there a bit.
We are talking about that, but actually, I do think, without having that little same conversation which we just did there, for me, it is always the bloody midfield.
Yeah.
It is always the piss in midfield, because fullback-wise, I don't really worry too much, because I think Reece James, I know he's had his injury problems. Reece James, I do think, is a very good operator at right back, and Tuchel knows him well. You could have Alexander-Arnold, yes, defensively, blah, 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 blah. He's played in huge games. He gives you something else. Lewis Hall, you mentioned, Miles Lewis-Skelly. Liveramento can play.
Yeah, there are options if everyone's fit.
Exactly. So that doesn't really worry me. And in terms of left wing, which I think the position is up for grabs as well, I think Gordon's a good player. I don't think he's a great player, but I think he's a good player. Maybe bring him on or something. Eza. Dare I even suggest Grealish is in the running, although it seems a bit fanciful now.
Well, if
sadly.
he has a full season somewhere and he plays regularly.
Exactly, yeah. At centre-half, I'm still a little bit unsure, and I can see why Southgate would go ultra defensively to make sure that was all shored up. The goalkeeper will be Pickford. Rice will start. Bellingham will start.
Rice is an interesting one, isn't he? Because I don't really think he's going to play at the base of midfield again for Arsenal.
Yeah.
He plays higher up now, so he will be playing in a role that becomes increasingly unfamiliar.
And this is the thing. So he it was always. I mean, look at the Euros. It became ridiculous, quite frankly, in those early rounds, when it was like, all right, we'll try Trent in there. That didn't work. We'll try after 60 minutes or whatever it was, change Gallagher, or half an hour or half time maybe it was, whatever. Gallagher, you go in. Oh, that didn't work. It's like. Yeah. No. There has to be better. To me, Wharton is the man who tries to give a bit of balance, and if not Wharton, I don't know. Do you try Little Angel again? I don't know.
But do you not think that particular position should be Rice?
Well, he's happy to do it, but I
don't think England play a game at the World Cup where they're going to need stroke for stroke the Arsenal version of Declan Rice.
No. Well, you've got Bellingham in that position.
Exactly.
Yeah, but Bellingham.
And I think it's a lovely treat. He'll break from midfield. He's very diligent, and he's very perceptive of the rhythms of a game to choose when he might need to do that. Yeah, but I don't think he would do it enough that he couldn't play the role that you've described there, that Alexander-Arnold played, that Conor Gallagher played.
But he can do that, absolutely.
But I think he should do that for England. I think that should be his primary position for England.
So who else are you having? But Bellingham clearly is often played a bit further forward.
Yeah, and I'd keep him there, and I'd play a bit of a stroker next to him in a Wharton, or like in the way they try to fashion Kobbie Mainoo into for England. I think that is a position up for grabs there, because I think Rice should do that.
I like you referring to it as a stroker.
Yeah, you invented a position there, and it's a real one. It works.
Yeah, okay, well that's good. Yeah, but that's kind of I wasn't really sure how to describe it, but it is essentially someone who does the crisper bits of that role, because I think Rice does the industry brilliantly.
It's an exit
with
door.
A bit of
it's a midfield exit door, isn't it?
Yeah.
But part of the point of midfield is get the ball away from the midfield.
Yeah, in midfield you've got snakes and you've got ladders.
It's true. It's true. I mean, some
Snake
people
starting at right back.
I think that the debate going into the last Euros, whatever, if it's still relevant, which perhaps it is, although Tuchel seems to need to do a lot more work elsewhere, it is in that midfield balance, because people say, well, I want Rice at the bottom and then Bellingham and Palmer in there that we saw against Andorra. I think we did.
Yeah, and the thing about that debate though is it's very tempting, isn't it? Because Bellingham's all-round game is so good that you can move him a little bit further back.
I mean, I would like to see Bellingham in a more kind of proper central midfield rather than that advanced role, because if it is Eberechi who you have inside, or Palmer, or Darren say Gibbs White, and him and Eze sort of switch and do all that. See, this is the problem with what we've just had with some of the England games, and that friendly in particular. It's like, why not try out that midfield against Senegal? That's the kind of thing. If you do that and that doesn't work, then I can see why, but anyway,
It's the bind, isn't it? Because you try things, but then you should settle on things.
Yeah.
It's just like, which way do you go?
Completely. I feel sympathy for any international manager, and particularly the England manager, because you might have one game in which you want to try 5 things which all seem perfectly logical.
Yeah.
We've just listed loads of different combinations there that you simply can't try in one.
And we've listed exciting options in midfield who all do the job very differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Gibbs White is very different to Eze. Eze is very different to Cole Palmer. Jude Bellingham further forward is very different to Jude Bellingham further back. Like,
yeah, you're right. Which is why I think that midfield conundrum is not going to go away anytime soon, unless I think if it was Rice, Wharton, and Bellingham in there.
How does Spain do this?
Yeah, it's so annoying, isn't it? I mean, you're a big fan of Curtis Jones, but I just feel it's.
In the space of a week, we've gone cold on Curtis Jones.
I always felt that the balance was a little bit better, but I was wanting to see. But yeah, anyway, look, this conversation will run and run and run. But we appreciate your question, Kai. But I think when we think positionally the weakest. I despite the options, I think midfield is where I worry the most. Maybe positionally weakest, you could make an argument perhaps at centre half, but I think again, if you've got Stones, Gay, Konza in there, it's not. I don't worry about that too much.
The floor is high with centre back,
reasonably.
Yeah, I think there you could potentially throw in left wing in there. I think.
Yes, that positions, as I say. I mean, Eze and Gordon.
There was only one player who's done it with a degree of flair mixed in with. I suppose putting fear into the opposition. It's probably Marcus Rashford. And so it feels like it's a position that's reliant on Marcus Rashford.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because otherwise people do it differently. Like we were playing Bellingham out there during the last Euros. Gordon hasn't quite nailed it in the way that I think we all know he can.
Yes, you're right.
But he just hasn't quite grabbed it.
You're right.
Eze does it very differently. Like, he comes inside and I love him for that, but it's just a very different way of playing that position. It's weird, yeah. It feels like there's as I said about the unicorn side of having a right wing, left-footed right winger. We suddenly don't have the right-footed left winger.
Yeah,
which feels more commonplace in modern football.
It does. Well, like I say, these conversations will run and run and run. Let's finish with this from Dean on email. Does Thomas Tuchel's tournament experience, albeit in club football, make him one of the best placed managers to navigate the tournament next year?
I think we kind of. I don't know if we were recording at the time, but I think we kind of happened upon this maybe about an hour or so ago. That no, they're very different things, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, this was the hope, wasn't it, when Tuchel was announced, and this feels to be the thinking. But it's like even in a club tournament, you actually get your if you put that as your sole focus. What Tuchel did, for example, at Chelsea with the Champions League was fashion a way of winning that one game against Manchester City, and he nailed it. But that came over the course of 9 months, didn't it? Rather than what is essentially 6 weeks, isn't it? 'Cause getting there is, we've seen it so many times, qualification form, even the form in the friendlies and the warm-up games before the tournament, it's repeatedly irrelevant.
Yeah.
So it really is about that condensed period of time, which Tuchel does not have experience of.
Also helped that Guardiola made, he overthought it. That was the game, wasn't it? That people often accused him of, or one example of that. It's also their two-legged affairs on the way to the final. I mean, the sort of crap answer is time will tell, but I think clearly he can use his pragmatism to set up against the side who are, you would argue, are better than them and get a result. And I think that's maybe one of the things that the FA were attracted to Tuchel, because with previous England managers, it's been a case of, let's just talk about Southgate. If you go further back, I think it's probably irrelevant. England would win the games they should win. They would win the games where there was a bit of jeopardy and a tough opponent. And when they came up against a side who was either maybe equal or better than them, certainly, you would say, then they lost. And in those games, if England face France, Spain or Portugal or perhaps even Brazil or Argentina, maybe Germany by that point, next summer, it's like, this again.
Which is the problem, isn't it?
And that's the
I
problem.
suppose this is the problem with England's standing in the game, isn't it? You need someone who can overachieve.
And this is why you think, right, we got to that glass ceiling with Southgate. And yes, the draws in those tournaments, other than in Qatar when they faced France and they were beaten, they had a kind of draw. You know, in the last Euros, they won the games that they should have won, beating, Slovakia, Switzerland and the Netherlands on the way there. Netherlands, not a bad side. They're probably better now, but England were the better team. So that's what it's about. And that is where I think people are thinking, right, what is it a case of? The confidence seems to be up, although after this week, maybe not, but the confidence is there. The shirt is not as heavy as it was. All that kind of thing goes into it. But Tuchel has to preserve that. He has to make sure that he takes all of that into the tournament. The only thing that's lacking is those finer details against the bigger side. And Southgate tactically against the teams in the fight, like take the final against Spain, the final against Italy. Subs maybe a little bit too late, or the wrong subs, or the wrong approach when it was like, right, we're now 20 minutes to go, or we got it back to 1, or now what do we do? And it was lacking. That's why they've turned to Tuchel. And does his previous experience help with this? Surely it does. Surely it does. You would think.
I think there is obviously a very real possibility as well that this is a huge period of adjustment, not just for Tuchel, but for that England squad who've had a very, very different environment under Gareth Southgate and have got used to the way things have been, which are naturally going to be very different now.
But in terms of the tactics and all, Jim, again, we did get to a point where we thought, is Southgate going to make the right sub here or the right decision? I love the man. I've talked about that. Blah 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 blah. But that's not what we're talking about here.
There was timidity to a lot of his
exactly,
approach.
And the timidity is the right thing. You got to the final. You either got level or you're in front. Right, now what you're going to do? And Tuchel came in as, right, this guy's a bit more ruthless. He's more pragmatic. He doesn't give a damn about maybe the egos in the team or upsetting the apple cart or whatever, within the realms of not upsetting the group, of course. Is this the guy who's going to be cutthroat and ruthless and get England over the line? That's the question here. Do you think that's, from what you've seen thus far, is, presumably you're a bit concerned about that now?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's early days.
I don't know that I ever realistically thought that England can go to this tournament in these conditions and win the World Cup. So I'm not sure that my expectations have actually adjusted very much, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, actually. I think there's, obviously England are planning for it, but it is so different when you're there.
Very different from the Euros.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, I think the conditions from an English perspective
you're right, yeah,
are going to be too brutal to be able to do anything.
Can we have some games at Wembley?
Yeah,
can we petition
nice.
that?
That'd be nice.
I was trying to think, if we go really north into Canada, we could, Newfoundland.
Where the ice is and all that.
Yeah, although some of that stuff's at altitude as well, which is a problem.
Oh, blimey, yeah, the altitude.
Where did Sarah Palin, Alaska? Maybe Sarah Palin can sort us out with some little grounds up there as well.
And we can get some tips from Michael Palin as well.
He travels a lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
He does travel a lot.
Yeah.
They wouldn't kick him out, would they? They wouldn't kick out. You can't kick out Michael Palin.
That's a sign of the end times, isn't it? If Michael Palin gets detained by ICE.
Yeah, true.
Does Attenborough travel? He does. It's just mainly voiceovers now, isn't it?
Famously, he did.
He did. He doesn't anymore, is he? He's quite old.
Probably, yeah.
They can't.
Yeah. So
I don't know why I thought Attenborough would be at a World Cup, but you never know.
Yeah, you don't. So,
This is a pile of absolute shit. Once again, the fans expect different.
The German manager there. Not you as well, David. Come on.